Hello, Claire and Judith. It's your granddad, and I thought I would show you a little map tour, Google Map tour of England. Your mom showed you some, but thought I would show you something that she might not know. So this is England, and um, we have England, we have Wales, we have Scotland up here, we have Northern Ireland. Those four things together make up the United Kingdom. Now, my family is from what's called the Midlands of England. So that, as the name implies, is the middle of England. So we're just going to zoom in here, and I'll show you where I was from. So there are two big cities, Manchester and Sheffield, that are also in the Midlands. And in between them, there's this place called the Peak District National Park. And so I was specifically born in this little town called Chapel-en-le-Frith, and it's French for chapel in the forest. Now, myself and your two uncles, Andrew and Paul, were all born at home. And also, I'm not sure if your mom told you this or not, but before my older brother was born, my mother had twin girls. Unfortunately, they were born too early and they didn't live. So she didn't have a good experience in the hospital. So she decided that she was going to have her other children at home. Now, if I zoom in, you'll see here is this house, and we'll use the street view. And so this is the house that I was born in. Now, when we lived here, it didn't have this side part of the house. And it was in England, it is what's called a semi-detached house. That means there's this part is one family and this part over here is another family, and there's a wall in between. We would call that a duplex in America, but they call it semi-detached. Now, my mother used to walk down this hill to the village, which is a very steep hill. Now, I was 5.5 years old when I moved with my family to America. I did go to school in this village, and I'm not sure if they still have the school. Sure, I could find it if I zoomed in, and it's not a school anymore. I'm thinking this is the school, but I'm not 100% sure. Let's just look at it from the front, see if it looks like a school. Well, it looks any more or less like a school than anywhere else. Okay, we're going to zoom out now. Now, my dad worked at a factory in the same town. Now, my mother was born in the next village over, next town over, called Buxton. And your mom's probably talked to you about that because she visited Buxton. Now, I'm going to show you the house where my grandfather lived in Buxton. And hopefully I can remember where it is. Oh yes, here it is. And it was called Derwent Road. And these houses were called council houses, which meant that my grandfather didn't own the house, but he lived there, so he rented the place. And the one that he lived in was this one right here. So this was also a semi-detached house. And so he lived on this side and somebody else lived over there. And we would stay here when we went to visit my granddad in England. We'd stay in this room. My granddad would stay in this little room here. So you can kind of see what it looks like. So I think my mother was born there. They moved there pretty close to the time she was born. And my grandfather was also born in Buxton. And he was born, I think, over here. So I'll show you a picture of that. So these houses right here, I believe, is one of the ones that he lived in. I know he lived there. I'm not sure if he was born there or not. So that is Buxton. Now your mom and your dad went to visit there, and they stayed in some apartments that were, well, here it is, this place called Roseley Guest House. And actually what I'm going to show you next is this was where my granddad had a shop on this street. And I don't know exactly which shop it was. I think it was along here. So this is a shopping area of Buxton. And there's what's called the marketplace, which is here, and they used to, people, I think they still do. Let's go down and see if there's any market things going on. Anyway, they used to have people come with things to sell, and they would set up stalls in this area, usually 1 or 2 days a week. So that's Buxton. Now my dad grew up in a place about not very far from here, and it was called Great Longston. So here's Great Longston. So it's in this national park called the Peak District. And I'll show you exactly where he grew up. Now, he wasn't born in this area. He was born in another village, which I'll show you later. So this is the house. Well, the house he grew up in had to be torn down because it got wet and the foundation rotted. But this was the house that was replaced it, and this is one that my grandmother used to live in, my other grandmother. And it's called Windy Ridge. A lot of times in England they name houses, they give a house a name instead of giving it a number. Now there used to be a house a little further down that looked kind of like the one that my dad grew up in. Yeah, I think it's this one right here. Let's see, go back. It's hard to see because there's all these trees. Yep. So it was kind of like this house. See if we can look at that any closer. No. So that was where my dad grew up. And what he would do is he liked to go play on the what were called the moors, and they are kind of like hills. And let me show you. Here's a picture up here. I probably can look down. So it's a hill, and then you can look down at the valley. So he would walk up from his house to this hill and then play on the hillside. Now one other thing I'm going to show you here is the village of Great Longston. So this is a bus stop, and across here, further down, got two things to show you. One is this here. This is the village school. So this would be where you would go to school if you lived in this village. And right, this house right here. So my great-grandmother and her family lived in this house, and they had a little shop, and it was like a little grocery store, and they sold all kinds of things. Now when they had the house, it didn't have the second floor. It was just this side and then a shorter side. Now up here, I'll show you one other thing. This village has these, a lot of villages in England have these markers, and they're to remember people who fought in wars and died in wars. Oh, I know there's another place. Yeah, my dad grew up, and I think it was. Let me go back to the map. They lived when they first moved to town. They lived on this little street called Sunnybank. There it is, Sunnybank. And oh, can't see any closer. Now here's what's like a playing field. So the children go out and play on it. There's a swing sets and merry-go-rounds here. So this is children's playground, and then the rest of it is a cricket ground, and you can actually see kind of outlines of where they play cricket. So maybe your mom can tell you about cricket. She may have to look that up. Now your mom's probably shown you where we used to stay when she was a little girl. We stayed in this place called Bakewell, and the actual house we stayed in is right here. So here it is. This was my dad's cousin and his wife, and the road was called Montiesh Road, and we would back our car into this driveway and walk up these steps and either go around the side or around the front door. Usually went around the side to the back. So that's where your mom and us and Heather stayed, usually. Now, Grandma and I have stayed here quite often, and I'm going to show you the house that we usually stay in. Oh, there it is. So it's in this valley. So we come up the road here, and this little part right here is where Grandma and I stay when we go on our trips to England. I was trying to figure out what, there's a for sale sign there. I'm not sure what's for sale. And this is where we park the car, right where that red car is, which is interesting because that must have been taken quite a long time ago, because now there's a garage right there, but it's not in this picture, so interesting. Oh, 2011, yep. So that was before they built the garage. So let's go back to a map. So this whole green area is a national park. And so it has rules so that you can't build new buildings without special permission. Now the rest of the family came, I'm just going to show you kind of the general idea. So again, this is the middle part of England. The Nicholsons, which is my last name, they came from an area up here near what's called the Lake District National Park. And actually we visited this. I'll show you the village that my family came from a long, long time ago. And Grandma and I stayed here a couple of years ago. Oops. So we stayed just down the road. This was the downtown area. This is a little shop. But you can see there's not very many cars. It's just a little small area. So that was where the Nicholsons came from. And I'm not going to show you too much more detail. The other part of the family came from over here, which is really close to where I was born. And another part of the family came from over here. So these are all in the middle of England. And one thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to pause it. So a few years ago I had this test done, and it's called DNA, and it's kind of the instructions on how to make your cells in your body. And you get some of those from your mom, and you get some from your dad, and you can take these cells, any cells, and you can do a test on it, and it will tell you where you came from. Well, because I know where I came from, it wasn't going to be a surprise, but if I hadn't known where I came from, I would have this analysis done, and it tells me where it thinks that I am from based upon the instructions in my cells. And if I zoom in, it says in the East Midlands, and that is exactly where I came from. So I'm trying to zoom in here and show you where that tells I'm the biggest likelihood of where I came from. So actually I was born here, but my grandparents, a lot of my grandparents grew up in this area. So that is the place that most of my ancestors, my grandparents, my great-grandparents, my great-great-grandparents, and you can see there's a picture here which looks very similar to what I've shown you earlier. So it's pretty cool that if I didn't know that I came from this area, a test of my cells would tell me that. And we also did one for Grandma, but I don't know where that is right now. And one other thing it'll do is it will tell you if anybody who's also taken the test matches. And this is somebody who's taken it, and I don't know if I've ever met this person, but they are a second cousin, which you have cousins which are Xander and Mikey. Second cousins are the cousins of your cousins. And so this is a second cousin that I have, and found it told me this through this test. So hopefully you found that interesting.